Welcome to Deep Dives. I'm Lainey. I'm the programming assistant here at the Bruce County Museum and Cultural Center.
And I'm Laura Leonard, curatorial assistant.
Alrighty, so today we're looking at some hats.
Yeah, so I thought I would kind of pull out a few hats that are very different in style, but date-wise, maybe not so far apart.
Okay.
But it just kind of showing some of the diversity that's in our hat collection, and just within the first half of the 20th century.
Yeah. Alrighty, so do we know what kind of person would have worn these hats?
These hats are actually, which maybe is a little crazy for us, but these are very much like everyday hats.
Okay.
So women pretty much, if they were going outdoors, had a hat on. So everyday wear,
Yeah.
you would include a hat,
Okay.
for sure. So even now, I know sometimes we think of ooh, it must be for something fancy. No, it was just sort of everyday dress.
Okay. I also noticed there's quite a size difference between this one and this one.
Yes. So this one, kind of hard to see, I know, because it's black and it's fuzzy, but it has a very big, what we call the crown. So the top part that would sit, of course, on your head. So if I put it on this lady's head here, you can see that it looks like it would just flop down well over top. But that wouldn't necessarily be the case. It's not that people's heads were bigger. Yeah. It's that ladies' hairstyles were very much bigger.
Okay.
So this hat dates to the turn of the 20th century, or roughly around the turn of the 20th century, which is when pompadour hairstyles were in. So that meant that women were pulling their hair up, but kind of featured big sort of curls in the front, in the back, and almost had a bun or some other sort of way to tie up your hair in the middle. So this would cover and allow for that kind of a hairstyle. And at that time, ladies had hat pins. So you would have a hat pin that would then secure your hat to your do, so that it wouldn't come off and would be solidly attached to you in some sort of way. This one also features an ostrich feather, which is a very common decoration for ladies' hats.
And then we were also talking about the hat's kind of fuzzy. Do we know what that would be?
So it definitely is some kind of a fur.
Okay.
I don't think it's beaver because it is dyed, but it definitely isn't a synthetic material. It would be a fur. I'm just not 100% sure which one it is.
So because it's a fur, would it be more like a winter hat sort of thing?
Yeah, could be.
Okay.
Also too, again, you think ooh, that's hot. But ladies wore fur coats and things like that. Could be even not necessarily in the summer because they would be heavy, but they would have shorter fur pieces for kind of more. Again, it's just it was part of style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then this hat we were talking about was worn by a pretty interesting lady.
Yeah, so this lady happens to have been the wife of the last reeve and the first mayor of Port Elgin. So her name is Lucille Tomlinson.
Mm-hmm.
She was very lucky, and her husband was an MP. So they were present at the coronation of King George VI in 1937.
Yeah.
She was featured in Mayfair magazine. And then the photo that's in there is of her in an outfit that she would have worn at one of the coronation events. So whether it was somebody's party or whatever. So not necessarily the coronation proper, but just there's a lot of festivities leading up to it and after, and it was an outfit that she would have wore then.
Yeah.
But yes, being that kind of a lady, she definitely had a hat on, when she went out. This one, it's a little harder to date some of these, only because the 20s that had very close cropped hairstyles. So you see what they call a cloche hat, where it's very close and has a little brim, goes with your flapper dress. The 30s and the 40s sort of saw this explosion of hat styles for women.
Okay.
So, there's veils, feathers were still a thing, but sometimes the actual hat itself would be much smaller and then would have, some big feathers sticking out of it. If you watch, classic 1930s or 40s movies, women have some of the most elaborate but wonderful hats that you've ever, you could ever possibly imagine to see. But the styles are so different. So same thing, you could still have big, you could have small. Again, women knew what they liked and knew what looked good on them.
Yeah.
So some of the older ladies still maybe would have worn a larger hat because that's what they knew it suited them, that kind of thing. So yeah, so this one I would say is probably 1940s, 50s, just based on some of like we call it cellophane straw. So it's a little
Okay.
bit more of like a plastic material,
Yeah.
which would definitely be a little later on in the 20th century.